first. We've got some lengths of 90 by 45 construction pine. It's nothing special, these are just roughly 300mm long lengths. What we're going to do is take our longest ones and we're going to assign those long ones to the legs. So I think we'll have these two. This should give us the ability to do 4 legs, one spare just in case. These 4 left over, they'll be our seat base. We'll glue them together, we'll joint them, run them through the table saw. We'll do that now.
Start by flattening a face. Once that's acceptable, flip the piece 90 degrees, place the flat face up against the fence and flatten the edge.
I've just run these through the jointer, so I've jointed one face and one edge. Now I'm going to do is mark on each one which face I've jointed and which edge I've jointed. Just a mark will do. This is the good one. I've pre-marked that one. So that when we put this on the table saw, we cut off the right side. Let's do that now.
When using my table saw, I like to make sure the blade height is about a tooth height higher than the piece I'm cutting. Also make sure the jointed face of the piece goes down and the jointed edge goes to the fence. I then adjust the fence here to cut only a very small amount off the piece to get the edge nice and straight.
There we go. So we've just gone to the jointer, flattened a face, trued up an edge 90 degrees to that face, then we've taken them to the table saw and trued up the other side so it's parallel with the original edge. As you can see here, the jointer leaves little scalloping marks on the surface, so we're going to true that up with a hand plane just to take the scallops out so it's nice and smooth for a glue finish.
This part is entirely optional as the jointer leaves a surface that is really just fine for glue ups.
Alright, I'm ready to glue up. Now it's important that you've got everything on hand when you're going to glue because this stuff only gives you about 10 minutes of workable time. So just another thing to be cautious of, the faces that we've marked, they need to go face down so that they sit nice and flat on the clamps. We don't care about the top face, we can plane that flat, run it through the thicknesser, we can get that all to be even some other way, but for now we'll just glue this up and it's pretty straightforward. Again, everything's on hand, ready to go. And this is something that you don't have to do, but what I like to do when I'm gluing them up is just rub the pieces together to ensure they get even coverage. Whether that actually does anything or not, who knows? Alright, we're going to leave that to set for about 2 hours. We'll come back, take it out of the clamps, flatten it, mark out the circle, and then cut the circle. I'll see you then. The glue's dried, I've taken this out of the clamps, I've marked the circle using the same method I used in the hand tool version. Feel free to watch that if you're interested. I'm going to now put this through the thicknesser and flatten the other side. I may just take off a few of these dags first to make it nice and flat, and then we can cut the hole on the bandsaw.
When I use the bandsaw, I never push the piece with the hand that's in front of the blade. You can hit a soft spot in the wood and slip into the blade. I rest my palm on the table and I only use my fingers and move them if needed, and they are well away from the path of the blade, as you can see.
Excellent. We've cut the seat itself. Now we're going to mark the location where the legs are going to go. Then we're going to round over the corners with a router.
You set your bevel to 120 degrees and divide the seat evenly with 3 lines. Then measure in 30mm from the side for the location of the legs. We're only rounding over the corner to take the sharp edge off, so don't worry too much if the round over or the edge looks rough. We'll fix this when we sand the seat later. We start on the end that's going to be glued into the seat. Since we know that the mortise in the seat will be 25mm in diameter, we'll measure the tenon and make sure that it's also 25mm in diameter. We then trim down the excess stock, ensuring the tenon is straight and very close to 25mm in diameter. After marking a rough gauge line, we cut down to the finished diameter of the bottom of the leg and begin to taper to this level from somewhere near the centre. Accuracy at this stage is not super critical, but all 3 legs should be identical. We then round over the bottom, we refine the taper if needed and give that whole end a good sanding. Next we put a decorative round indent in the centre of the leg, then move on to cutting the taper at the top of the leg in the same way as before. You can be as ornate here as you like, but we chose a very simple design. Don't forget to sand while it's still on the lathe. This is much easier now rather than later. Also, make sure you don't sand too much off and recheck the tenon diameter if necessary.
Rightio, now we've got to cut the holes in this for the legs, so I'm going to use a 25mm Forstner bit, which is what we've cut the legs at on the lathe, and I'll show you how to do that now.
Tilt the drill press table 10 degrees down towards the centre of the seat. Align the point of the bit with the marking on the seat, then plunge down 35mm. If you do this right, you should end up with a hole that's 25mm in diameter and close to 30mm deep. Then just repeat this for the other 2 legs.
Excellent. So you need to use a drill press so that the holes are the same depth and the same angle. What I've used is 10 degrees, and that seems to work okay, and I've got a depth stop set to 35 millimeters. All right, now before we glue this together, we're going to do a dry fit just to make sure that it all works okay. So the dry fit was all good. Now I'm going to sand the seat because it's easier to do now than when the legs are glued to it. All right, sanding's done. It's time to glue the legs in.
Put a decent amount of glue in all 3 mortises and smear it around the sides evenly. Then apply some glue evenly to each leg before inserting them into the mortise.
Alright, glue up's finished. I'm just going to leave them in there. I'm not going to clamp them. Gravity will do its job. And I'll show you what it's like when the glue's dried. Rightio, the glue's dried on the power tool version. I'll cover finishing that and the hand tool one in a separate video. Thanks for watching.